Part 1. The day 62 children saw something impossible. There are stories so strange that people dismiss them before hearing a single detail. They hear the words UFO, they hear children, they hear Africa, and they decide the answer in advance. But some events do not disappear simply because they are inconvenient. On September 16, 1994, at a private school outside Harare, Zimbabwe, dozens of children claimed they witnessed something extraordinary in broad daylight. Not one child, not two, more than 60. They said a craft descended near the school grounds. They said beings emerged. They said the figures looked directly at them. And many of those children would carry the memory for the rest of their lives. This became known as the Ariel school incident. And unlike many UFO stories, this case did not begin in darkness, intoxication, isolation, or rumor. It happened in daylight. It happened on school property. It involved many witnesses at once, and it was investigated by professionals. To understand why this case still disturbs skeptics decades later, we need to understand the setting. Ariel School was considered a respected private school in Rua, a town east of Harare. The children came from mixed backgrounds, some local, some international. Many were from families that valued education and discipline. This was not a place known for mass hysteria or cult beliefs. It was an ordinary school morning. Teachers were inside attending a staff meeting. Students were outside during break time. Children played games, some ran around the yard. Some talked in groups, some wandered near the edge of the grounds. Then something interrupted the normal rhythm of the day. Several children noticed bright flashes in the sky. Some described a silver object. Some said it moved strangely, not like an airplane, not like a helicopter, not like anything they recognized. Then attention shifted toward a scrubby area beyond the playground. There, according to many witnesses, an object had landed, or hovered low near the brush. Imagine being a child, no adults nearby, no explanation, no warning. Just the sudden appearance of something that did not fit reality. The children moved closer, some out of curiosity, some out of fear. Some stayed back and watched from a distance. Then came the part that made the story famous. Several children said one or more small beings appeared near the craft. Descriptions varied in detail, but common themes emerged. Small bodies, large dark eyes, strange movement, tight black clothing, or skin that looked dark and smooth. Some said the figures moved in a gliding way. Some said they seemed to jump or vanish and reappear. Some said time felt strange. Children often struggle to describe unfamiliar things. Adults mistake that struggle for lying. But confusion can also be the mark of a real event that lacks vocabulary. Then many witnesses described something even stranger. They said one being looked at them, not casually, intensely, as if communicating without words. Some children later said they received impressions or thoughts, messages about technology, messages about environmental destruction, messages that humanity was moving in the wrong direction. Whether literal telepathy or a child's interpretation of fear, the experience affected them deeply. And then, as suddenly as it began, it ended. The craft departed. The figures were gone. The playground remained. The sky returned to normal. But the children did not. Because once ordinary reality breaks in front of you, even for minutes, it does not easily repair. When teachers emerged, they found students agitated, emotional, trying to explain what had happened. Some were crying, some were excited, some were terrified. Some insisted others come see the landing area. At first, many adults assumed a childish fantasy, a prank, a story spreading during recess. That would be the normal explanation. And sometimes the normal explanation is correct. But this case did not behave normally, because the number of children involved was large, because many accounts overlapped, because the emotional intensity remained, and because when investigators later interviewed them separately, key similarities persisted. This is where the Ariel school story stops being a playground rumor and starts becoming one of the most difficult mass witness cases in modern UFO history. I am your host for Vantage Elite. Tonight, we reopen the case. What really happened at Ariel School? Mass imagination? Misidentified technology? A psychological chain reaction? Or something that still has no satisfying explanation? In Part 2, we examine the interviews, the drawings, and why trained investigators took these children seriously. Part 2, the interviews that shook investigators. Most strange stories fade within hours. People calm down. Memories blur. Witnesses begin copying each other. Adults unintentionally guide the narrative. And by the next day, truth is mixed with noise. That is why timing matters. In the Ariel school case, interviews began quickly. Journalists arrived, researchers became interested. And what they found was not a neat, rehearsed fairy tale. It was messy, emotional, human, and disturbingly consistent in the places that mattered most. One of the earliest people to document the children was Cynthia Hind, a well-known Zimbabwean researcher who had spent years collecting reports of unexplained aerial phenomena. She spoke with students soon after the incident. She listened to children separately. She asked what they saw. She asked where they stood. She asked what frightened them. And the children began to draw. This is one of the strongest features of the Ariel school case, the drawings, because drawings often reveal what words cannot. Many children sketched a disc-like craft. Some drew a flattened silver object. Some drew domes or lights. Some placed it near trees or brush. Some drew more than one object. That variation matters. Real witnesses often disagree on secondary details. Perfect agreement can indicate rehearsal. But imperfect agreement with recurring core elements can indicate authenticity. Then came the figures. Again and again, children drew small beings. Large heads, dark eyes, thin limbs, strange proportions. Some drawings were crude. Some surprisingly detailed. Some looked like nightmares. Others looked like attempts to honestly capture the impossible. Critics say children are imaginative. That is true. Children imagine constantly. But imagination usually entertains. This looked different. Many of the students were visibly unsettled. Some appeared anxious while speaking. Some struggled to explain what they meant. Some repeated the same sensory details even when uncertain about labels. That distinction matters. A liar often tells a story. A witness often relives an experience. Then entered the most famous investigator connected to the case, Dr. John Mack, a Harvard psychiatrist and Pulitzer Prize-winning academic. Not a fringe nobody. Not a random internet personality. A respected professor with a career to protect. Mack had become interested in extraordinary human experiences, including abduction reports. When he interviewed the Ariel school children, he did not simply ask, "Did you see aliens?" He explored emotion, memory, behavior, consistency, trauma, and his reaction remains one of the reasons this case refuses to die. Mack later said he found the children credible, not because every detail matched, not because he proved extraterrestrials landed at a school, but because he believed many children were sincerely describing a real anomalous experience. That is a crucial distinction skeptics often ignore. A witness can be sincere and mistaken, but sincerity across dozens of children demands explanation. What did they sincerely experience? Some children described the beings moving strangely, almost in slow motion, or too quickly. Some said they seemed to appear and disappear. Some said they floated. Others said they simply walked. Again, inconsistency in edges, consistency in center. There were beings. There was an object. There was fear. There was eye contact. There was impact. And then there was the environmental message. Several children later recalled impressions that humans were harming the planet. Machines were dangerous. Technology was becoming destructive. To modern ears, that sounds cinematic. But remember the year, 1994, before social media, before endless climate documentaries in children's feeds, before every teenager could repeat talking points from online culture wars. Could children still absorb environmental ideas from society? Of course. But why would that emerge inside a recess panic story unless it was tied to how they interpreted the encounter? Skeptics propose contamination. One child invents it, others copy. Adults amplify it. Memory hardens over time. This is possible in many cases, but it struggles here for one reason. The children were not calmly building a legend over weeks. They were reacting quickly and emotionally in the immediate aftermath. And many of those emotions were fear, not delight. People imagine that children would love to meet aliens. Many of these children did not behave like thrilled pranksters. They behaved like kids who had seen something they could not process. That does not prove aliens. It proves the event deserves seriousness, and seriousness is often missing where ridicule is easier. By now, the story had escaped Zimbabwe. Media began noticing. Researchers argued. Skeptics rolled their eyes. Believers declared victory. But the truth rarely belongs fully to either side, because between fraud and flying saucers lies a wider territory: misperception, social contagion, unknown technology, psychological anomaly, and genuine unexplained events. In Part 3, we investigate the skeptical explanations. Could 62 children have triggered a mass illusion? Or do the normal answers collapse under pressure? Part 3. The skeptical explanations. Whenever a story sounds impossible, skepticism is healthy. Not cynical dismissal, not blind belief. Healthy skepticism asks a simple question: what ordinary explanation fits the facts best? And the Ariel school case demands that question. Because if there is a normal answer, we should prefer it. Extraordinary conclusions should come last, not first. So what are the main skeptical theories? The first is mass hysteria, also called mass psychogenic illness or social contagion. One child becomes frightened, others mirror the fear. Emotion spreads, memory forms around shared excitement. This phenomenon is real. It has happened in schools, factories, towns, even entire communities. Humans are social creatures. We borrow reactions from each other faster than we admit. At first glance, Ariel school seems to fit. Many children together. No adults present. Sudden excitement. Stories spreading quickly. Case closed? Not so fast. Mass hysteria usually spreads symptoms or panic. Laughing fits, fainting, fear of poison, belief in danger. But it does not always generate detailed visual narratives with recurring object descriptions, location references, and later consistent interviews. Could it still happen? Yes. Does it fully explain Ariel? Debatable. The second theory is misidentification. Perhaps the children saw a vehicle, a helicopter, an unusual aircraft, workers near the brush, a bus in the distance, someone dressed strangely. Then imagination filled the gaps. This is common in UFO history. Venus becomes a spaceship. A flare becomes a mothership. A weather balloon becomes government conspiracy. Human perception is flawed, especially under surprise. But Ariel presents a problem. Many children insisted the object was close, low to the ground, not a distant light. And the beings were near enough to describe eyes, movement, clothing, posture. Could distance have been misjudged? Absolutely. Children often estimate distance poorly. Adults do too. But the closer the claimed encounter, the harder simple lights in the sky explanations become. The third theory is cultural influence. Maybe the children had seen science fiction, alien imagery, large-eyed beings, silver craft. By 1994, pop culture already contained such images. This is true. Media can shape expectation. Once people have a template, strange experiences may get interpreted through it. But here again, timing matters. These were children in Zimbabwe at a private school, not a Hollywood fan convention. Some were familiar with alien imagery, some less so. And many accounts focused less on space invaders and more on emotional disturbance. Fear, staring, communication, wrongness. Those are not always the marks of movie imitation. Then comes memory contamination. Over years, witnesses talk. Documentaries appear. Interviews repeat. Stories become stronger, cleaner, more dramatic. This happens constantly in famous cases. Memory is not a vault. It is reconstruction. Every recall can rewrite the past. That means modern adult testimonies about Ariel must be treated carefully. But remember something critical. The case became notable because of the immediate child interviews, not only adult nostalgia decades later. The strongest evidence is closest to the event, not farthest from it. Then there is the uncomfortable skeptical answer many avoid saying directly. Children lied. They wanted attention. They made it up. Some perhaps did. In any large group, exaggeration is possible. But 60+ children sustaining emotional consistency under adult questioning, with many still standing by it decades later, is a large claim of deception. Possible? Yes. Likely? That depends on your view of children, pressure, and human behavior. Here is the deeper issue. Every skeptical explanation can explain part of the case, but no single one explains every part cleanly. Mass contagion explains spread. Misidentification explains strange object reports. Culture explains alien imagery. Memory distortion explains later embellishment. But together, they begin sounding less like one explanation and more like a toolbox assembled after the fact. That does not make aliens more likely. It makes certainty less justified. And certainty is often the real fraud in mysterious cases. Believers say, too many witnesses to dismiss. Skeptics say, too many psychological variables to trust. Both sides hold fragments of truth. Because numbers of witnesses do not guarantee accuracy, and psychology does not automatically erase all anomalies. What remains undeniable is this: something happened that morning. Something sufficient to strongly affect many children. Something memorable enough that adults are still discussing it decades later. The question is not whether an event occurred. The question is what kind of event it was. In Part 4, we follow the children into adulthood. Did they recant? Did they profit? Did their memories collapse? Or did time make the mystery deeper? Part 4. The children grew up. Time destroys many stories. Memories fade. Witnesses contradict themselves. Embarrassment replaces certainty. People quietly admit they exaggerated. That is what skeptics expected would happen with Ariel School. After all, these were children. A strange recess memory from 1994 should have dissolved into adulthood. But something more complicated happened. Many of those children grew up and still said they saw something real, not with excitement, not with fame-seeking energy, but with the quiet seriousness people use when describing something that unsettled them for life. This is one reason the Ariel School case remains powerful. Not because adult memory is perfect. It is not. But because many former students, now mature adults with careers, families, responsibilities, and reputations, continue to describe the event as deeply significant. Some say the memory never left them. Some say they tried to bury it for years. Some say they avoided the topic completely. Some say it changed how they understand reality itself. That reaction matters, because hoaxes usually chase reward, attention, money, status, public identity. But many Ariel witnesses did the opposite. They disappeared into normal life. Teachers, professionals, parents, ordinary adults trying to live ordinary days. Several did not build careers from the story. Several did not seek cameras. Some even seemed reluctant to speak at all. That does not prove truth, but it weakens the simplest cynical explanation. Then came documentaries, follow-up interviews, reunions with memory. And when former students were asked again what happened, many still described the same emotional center of the event: a craft, small beings, fear, eye contact, the feeling that reality had suddenly become unstable. Some details changed over time. That is normal. Memory shifts around the edges, but emotional cores often remain, especially when the original moment carried shock. Trauma researchers know this paradox well. People may forget exact positions, exact timing, colors, sequences, distances, but remember the feeling with disturbing precision: the dread, the confusion, the helpless curiosity, the sensation that something was wrong. That pattern appears again and again in Ariel testimonies. Then there is another striking feature. Several former witnesses appear uncomfortable when discussing it. Not theatrical, not triumphant, not eager. Uncomfortable, as if reopening a drawer they kept shut for years. Some laugh nervously. Some pause mid-sentence. Some struggle to explain. Some look frustrated that listeners keep forcing them into only two boxes: aliens or lies. Reality is often messier than either. Perhaps they saw extraterrestrials. Perhaps they experienced a rare psychological event. Perhaps unknown terrestrial technology. Perhaps an ordinary stimulus filtered through childhood fear. But to many witnesses, none of those labels fully match the memory, and that unresolved tension still shows on their faces. Skeptics correctly point out a danger. Repeated interviews can reinforce belief. If society tells you for decades that you were part of the famous alien school case, identity can attach itself to memory. This is true. Narratives can shape recollection. But the reverse can also be true. A powerful, real experience can survive because it was powerful and real to the person who lived it. So adulthood testimony does not solve the case. It deepens it. Then there is the social cost. Imagine telling coworkers you saw beings near a UFO as a child. Imagine dating while carrying that story. Imagine hearing jokes every time the topic appears online. Imagine watching strangers decide your sanity from a headline. Many people would deny it just to avoid the friction. Many would stay silent forever. Yet some witnesses still speak publicly. Not loudly, not proudly, but steadily. That willingness suggests sincerity, even if sincerity alone is not proof. One former student described the event as the moment they realized the world might contain things adults do not understand. That sentence may be the true legacy of Ariel School. Not aliens. Uncertainty. Children are often told adults understand reality. Then one strange morning can reveal that adults may be improvising too. As the witnesses matured, so did the audience. New generations discovered the case through clips, podcasts, and documentaries. Some saw honesty. Some saw contamination. Some saw evidence of contact. Some saw the machinery of belief. And both sides may be touching part of the truth. Because this case is not only about what happened in Zimbabwe, it is about how humans decide what deserves belief, who gets dismissed, what number of witnesses matters, how childhood testimony is valued, how ridicule controls inquiry, and how mystery survives in an age addicted to instant answers. In Part 5, we ask the final question: what most likely happened at Ariel School, and why one ordinary playground morning still haunts modern UFO history. Part 5. What most likely happened. By now, most people want a clean ending, a verdict, a confession, a secret file, a final sentence that closes the case forever. But real mysteries rarely end so politely. The Ariel School incident has survived for decades because it refuses to fit into one neat box. If you already believe aliens visit Earth, this story sounds like confirmation. If you believe every extraordinary claim has an ordinary cause, it sounds like mass confusion. But both reactions may be too easy. So what most likely happened that morning in Zimbabwe? Let us begin with what is strongest. Something happened. That should not be controversial. Dozens of children were visibly affected. Many gave immediate accounts. Many remained emotionally invested long after the event. There was enough intensity to create a lasting psychological mark. So the true debate is not whether an event occurred. It is what kind of event occurred. Theory 1. Mass social contagion. Children influence children quickly. Fear spreads fast. One unusual sight becomes a shared dramatic narrative. This explanation has real scientific support, and it may explain part of what happened, especially in a group without adults present. But by itself, it does not satisfy everyone, because the emotional seriousness and long-term consistency remain difficult to dismiss completely. Theory 2. Misidentification. Perhaps an unusual vehicle. Perhaps workers or strangers near the field. Perhaps distance distortion mixed with childhood imagination. This also happens often. Human perception is flawed, especially under surprise, especially in groups. And yet many witnesses insisted the encounter felt close, personal, direct. That does not make them correct, but it complicates simple dismissal. Theory 3. A genuine anomalous event. Not necessarily extraterrestrial, not automatically aliens. Simply something unusual that the witnesses could not interpret. Unknown technology, rare atmospheric phenomenon, psychological anomaly triggered by a real stimulus, something real, then filtered through young minds. This explanation may be the most intellectually honest because it allows uncertainty without surrendering reason. The biggest mistake people make with this case is assuming only two options exist: spaceship or lie. Reality offers many more categories than human debate usually allows. Then there is a harder truth. Children are not always accurate, but neither are adults. Memory is imperfect. Perception is imperfect. Skepticism is imperfect. Even ridicule can be imperfect certainty wearing a smarter suit. So where does that leave us? With probabilities, not absolutes. My assessment is this. The Ariel School children likely experienced a real triggering event, something external enough to alarm many of them, something ambiguous enough to be interpreted differently, something powerful enough to become unforgettable. Then memory, discussion, and time shaped the edges, but the emotional core remained. That may disappoint believers. It may also disappoint skeptics. Good. Truth often disappoints tribes, because tribes want certainty more than accuracy. Why does this case still matter today? Because Ariel School exposes how humans process the unknown. We mock first, choose sides second, investigate last. We demand instant answers to events that may deserve patience. We underestimate children. We overestimate adults. We confuse confidence with knowledge. And perhaps most importantly, we forget that unexplained does not automatically mean impossible. It simply means unexplained. One ordinary schoolyard morning became global folklore, not because we know what happened, because we do not, and that gap still bothers us. Maybe the true legacy of Ariel School is not contact from elsewhere. Maybe it is a reminder that mystery still exists here, in daylight, on playgrounds, inside memory, inside human perception itself. Some of those children saw aliens. Some saw fear. Some saw confusion. Some saw something they still cannot name. And perhaps all of them, in their own way, were telling the truth as they experienced it. I am your host for Vantage Elite. Stay skeptical. Stay awake. Stay elite.